Hi, my name's Marta Dyczok, and I teach in the departments of History and Political Science. One of the courses that I teach is called the Soviet Experiment, which looks at Soviet history. And something that surprises me every year is students who are in third year history have not heard about the Holodomor. And it's a topic we covered last week, actually, and about half the class had heard about the event and half hadn't. And this is 2016. And Ukraine has been independent for 25 years, and news about this horrible event has been in the public sphere for a while, and yet it's still not really making it into the main historical narratives. So this sort of a bust, this is a wonderful way of telling not just history students, but all students about an event that's not very well known still.
My question is, what is your critique to the sort of journalistic practices that has happened that has covered up the Holodomor? What is your opinion and your critique of journalism because of this?
Well, that's an excellent question, and there's two answers to that. The media coverage at the time of the actual Holodomor, the artificial famine, was practically non-existent. The Soviet Union was a closed society, so journalists couldn't really go in there. However, there were some journalists that did travel to the Soviet Union and did cover news from the Soviet Union, and there's a very well-known journalist called Walter Duranty who was reporting for the New York Times, and he knew that this was happening. He saw the famine, and yet in his reports to the New York Times, he didn't report on it. In private conversations, he talked to political officials in the United States, so he is one of the people who helped cover up the event when it was happening. There's a British journalist called Malcolm Muggeridge who reported for the Guardian, and he's one of the few journalists who actually did report on the famine. So at the time when this was happening, there was very little coverage, and that fed into the Soviet narrative to deny the whole famine. Since the Soviet Union fell apart and this has become in the public domain and much better known, there's been quite a lot of coverage about it, and there was actually a move to strip Walter Duranty of his Pulitzer Prize for silencing the Holodomor at the time. But this is a topic that is one of many, many genocides that we now know about. So I don't know that I'd be critical of journalists now, because it is being reported on.
What are your thoughts about the funding that the Holodomor Tour has received from the federal and the provincial government, and how do you think that is going to educate and make cognizant of students here at Western and greater communities in Greater Canada about such an atrocity?
Well, I think it's wonderful that governments and universities and students and community organizations all work together on just raising awareness about these issues, because if we look at parallel things like, how did people learn about the Holocaust? It was because people started talking about it, and journalists started talking about it, and scholars started talking about it, and governments started paying attention, and now it's a very well-known tragedy in history, and this is something that is starting to happen with the Holodomor. Come and see the bus, and if you haven't seen it here, take a look online, because this is something that will probably change the way you see the history of the Soviet Union. Thank you.